Hey, welcome investors to the 40 Finance channel. Today I'm talking about the ARK ETF, ARKK. This is one that I hold in my ETF portfolio. Now, way back when I started in 2018, I was mostly intrigued with the fund because they were investing in Bitcoin. They were taking some chances on some internet stocks that normally I wouldn't touch. And I was always like, this is a good way to force myself into other investments that I traditionally wouldn't do. So it's almost like a hedge against myself in my retirement portfolio. It sits around 10% of the SEP IRA that I've shown on this channel before. And one of the features of it that I think that I like the most is the fact that it's a managed ETF. So it doesn't follow particular rules or, holding requirements. And when you're playing in this crazy growth space, particularly like we've seen over the past couple months, I think that the fact that ARK is a managed ETF is a good thing. Now this year they've seen the performance of the fund have an off year, and there's a lot of speculation about, how long does that continue? Should you sell your ARK fund? Is Cathie losing her magic touch? I would say the current momentum for ARK funds, in particular ARKK, that momentum score has got to be at one of the lowest I've seen over the past few years. And some of that is because growth investing hit such a peak during the pandemic and into 2021. So for today's video, I'm just going to share a few of my own opinions about ARKK. We'll look at some numbers, and I'll let you know if I think that it's worth a buy right now. All right, taking a look at ARK through the lens of SeekingAlpha. And yes, SeekingAlpha does do ETF ratings, and they also do their same news service and author analysis that comes through. If you're interested in learning more about SeekingAlpha, my affiliate link is in the description. That also includes a special discount for 40 Finance viewers, so check that out. But what we got here is our year-to-date chart. Right in front here, and you can see ARK is down about 21%. And when you magnify it just in terms of 2021, obviously there's a lot of concern out there. Now, from where I started, and I've been in and out, but if I started in 2018 around $39, prior to the pandemic, that ETF, I guess, got to maybe $50 or so. And really, I would consider this time frame here to be pre-growth thesis, right? So there were still growth stocks out there, but the audience for growth stocks and those speculating in growth stocks certainly went to the nines. So the run-up after the pandemic, when the audience for growth stocks probably quadrupled, if not 100x'd, the amount of investors who are interested in that particular strategy. And we've had some sell-off since then, right? But if you kind of go back, and I just maybe eyeball 1028 here, price for ARK was $94.75, and you've seen the roller coaster ride, right? But even with all the negativity that I've personally seen towards ARK, and a lot of it is summarized right here with the writers on SeekingAlpha, you can see very bearish, bearish, neutral, bearish, bearish, so on and so forth. And for all the people that are throwing rocks at ARK right now, if you stopped buying in October, or whatever that date was that I just showed, October 20th or something, you're still up $5. And you've had this whole whirlwind, all these headlines, changes in investing direction, and you're still up $5. Now, if you got in at the beginning of this year, obviously you're down 20%. So in my personal situation, I think that my ARK average cost per share is around $88 or $90, because with a IRA, I tend to make chunk deposits and invest, chunk amounts here and there, particularly a SEP IRA, which is based on other factors of how much money you made. So I can tell you right now, when I log into my Fidelity account, I'm actually up 5, 6, 7% on ARK funds, and mostly because I didn't do any big buys in that month of February, March, when the peak of the peak was in. So the point of that example is just keep in mind perception probably has a lot to do with when people bought in, right? It's easy to write an article about, dropped from all-time highs. I don't think that there's anyone who looks back at the market in February, March, certainly in hindsight, and says that that was a fairly valued stock market. So any stock, including ARK funds, that's being based on a fall from all-time highs, that if it sits anywhere in the neighborhood of growth stocks, I would argue we saw an exceptionally overvalued market in February, March, and perhaps it's best to judge your investments on a much longer runway. All right, speaking of those investments, if we look at ARK's Holdings, which has done, pretty much ad nauseum across the internet lately, start right at the top with Tesla, and I'd be the first to say Tesla's valuation has run ahead of its production. If you're truly a Tesla bull, then this story has just started, because they're nowhere on the map in terms of vehicle sales to some of the bigger companies, right? So the Tesla game has just started, and you got Roku. How long does it take to reset the cable TV industry and traditional television? Certainly not going to happen in a 6-month span. So if you're bullish on Roku, again, you're probably looking at 5 to 10 years for the full thesis to play out. Same thing on Teladoc. You're talking about eliminating a lot of doctors' offices and integrating with healthcare plans and stuff like that. That's going to take forever. The medicine world is basically a dinosaur land where you still have people who write paper prescriptions that you carry into the pharmacy. If Teladoc's going to win, it is going to be 5+ years away. Now they've been able to carve out a market. All these companies, Zoom, Teladoc, Coinbase, Unity, Spotify, they've all been able to carve out small wins over the past 1 or 2 years. But the bigger win for all of them is not even here yet. So when I take a look at the holdings in ARK and I think about like the real home run thesis for all of them, it hasn't even started yet. And as it pertains to me, almost every stock on that list I would not purchase today as a standalone stock because I think that it's overvalued. And when I look at the list and think about, have these companies achieved their end goal? Some of them have from a short-term perspective, but the huge number growth story still looks to be a few years away for most of these names. So for me anyway, I'm going to hang on to the fund and let things play out. All right, so we talked about, even though ARK is down 20% plus this year, my opinion is you probably need to give it a longer timeline. So there is potentially an opportunity to buy low here. The only thing that I'll say from my standpoint is that when I look at the stocks that are in ARK, I would say that there's a case that they are still overvalued as individual tickers. The question is, will ARK fall further from $99? My guess is that it probably will over the next month, certainly if we continue to see this market volatility. Now, ignoring the sort of COVID implications that we're starting to get back into, you're going to start hearing people talk about the fact that interest rates going up reduces the valuation for growth stocks. But I do want to stress slowly over time, because these interest rate hikes will likely begin at about 0.25%, and there'll be a shock to the system. And that's going to be a good time to buy. But slowly over time, these things are going to continue to produce more revenues and profits. And so the delta between their valuations and their multiples will naturally start to close to some degree. So what's my bottom line opinion on ARKK? I still think it's worth a shot as a percentage of your portfolio, particularly if you're just trading in ETFs. I went with 10%, and I will probably have my next chunk investment either in December or January. So I almost for sure we'll add a few shares of ARK at this level. It's not going to be my top ETF going forward, which most of you probably know is the QQQ. But I think that there's a lot of possibilities with what ARK is investing in and some of the choices they make. They may or may not pan out, but I think overall, the core thesis that they're working on still has a lot of room to run. The catch is, we'll just have to see if it actually plays out the way they think. All right, guys, hope you enjoyed this look at ARKK. Please give me a like, subscribe to the channel if you did. We'll see you on the next video.